All right, are you ready to go? You ready to go outside? Well, I'm going to put your leash on and let's go see what's out there. Well, me and my dog Canina Bonita are getting ready to go on our morning constitutional. There she is. I know the Japanese have talked about spirit bathing or all different kinds of bathing. Well, this is forest bathing for me because we are in the Pisgah National Forest. This is where I live. Definitely enjoy being outside. Many great composers were deeply inspired by nature. They often sought solitude outdoors as a wellspring for their creativity. And there are several notable examples of composers who loved nature, and their love of nature helped shape their music. You think about somebody like Beethoven. Everybody knows that Beethoven was a great lover of nature. He was a passionate walker. I suppose you could even call him a hiker nowadays. He took long rambles through the countryside around Vienna, and he carried sketchbooks with him, had music paper, and he would use that time out in nature to jot down musical ideas that came to him in nature. Now, Beethoven's love of nature definitely had an influence on his composing. All you have to do is listen to his Symphony No. 6, which is called the Pastoral. And it is a direct tribute to nature, with movements titled things like Scene by the Brook or Thunderstorm. Beethoven once wrote, "No one can love the country as much as I do. My bad hearing does not trouble me here." So he found peace and renewal outdoors, which helped soothe his troubled spirit, and it gave him a musical inspiration. Another famous composer who was definitely inspired by nature was Anton Dvořák. He loved nature. He loved spending time in the countryside of Bohemia, now the Czech Republic. And much later, when he moved to America, emigrated to America, he loved to spend time in the Midwest. He was also an avid bird watcher, and he enjoyed rustic village life. He was not a terribly sophisticated person, I guess, but his Ninth Symphony, called From the New World, was inspired by the vast landscapes of America. And it was also inspired by spirituals and the folk music that he encountered in his travels when he would go to these rustic, out-of-the-way places, villages, and he'd hear these folk tunes, and he would incorporate them into his music. And so his chamber works, for example, are infused with folk rhythms, pastoral melodies, and they just kind of give you the feeling of being in open spaces. Another famous composer who loved the outdoors was Gustav Mahler. He loved nature and composed most of his major works during summers in secluded lake cottages in Austria. To write music, he needed silence and the natural world around him to write. And so his symphonies often reflect the grandeur of nature and even the terror of nature. Sometimes you can hear bird songs reflected in his work. You'll hear storms, the tranquility of a beautiful sunrise. These all appear in his musical landscapes. You know, his first symphony, it opens with a movement that has a dawn-like atmosphere, complete with the call of the cuckoo. You'll have to listen to that and listen for that cuckoo in there. Another famous, by the way, I am walking up a very steep hill right now, and I'm trying to talk at the same time, so I might be getting just a little winded. My dog, however, is doing very well. I actually live on a mountain here, and so you can see I'm continuing to go uphill. Kanina is very anxious to go. Back up a little bit, girl. You ready? We're just going to go a little ways up this hill and then head back. However, way up there is somebody else with a dog. That's always a dangerous thing because Kanina will start barking. So we're going to turn around and head back. Another composer who loved nature was Jean Sibelius. He lived much of his life. He was born in 1865, lived into the 50s. He lived much of his life in a secluded villa called Enola, surrounded by Finnish forests. He was Finnish, obviously. And he drew deep inspiration from the Nordic landscape. And of course, this had an influence on his composing. His tone poems, like Finlandia and the Swan of Tuonela, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but these are vivid musical portraits of nature, mythology, and the mysterious atmosphere of the North. Sibelius once wrote, and he was not writing in English, I think he was writing in Finnish, but he said, "For me, nature's not a landscape, but a live background for my soul." The composer Ralph Vaughan Williams, another great lover of being outside, of nature. He walked extensively in the English countryside. I don't know if any of you have ever been to England, but it is a beautiful place out in the country. And he cherished traditional life and songs. He collected English folk songs, and he loved life in the rural settings, the simplicity of rural life. And of course, it had an influence on his music. One of his most famous pieces is called The Lark Ascending. It's one of the most iconic musical expressions of the English landscape. This very famous piece evokes a lark soaring over the green fields. Much of Vaughan Williams' orchestral and choral music, it reflects the rolling hills, the calm meadows, and the weathered beauty of Britain. Another composer who was inspired by nature is Claude Debussy. He was not a hiker like the others. In fact, Debussy was kind of a sedentary type of guy, but he was drawn to the sea. Maybe some of you out there just love being by the ocean. He was drawn to the sea, to moonlight, to natural imagery, and he used his music to evoke impressions of nature rather than depicting it literally. And of course, one of his most famous compositions is La Mer, the sea, or Clair de Lune. These pieces are full of shimmering textures and fluid motion, like light on water, or like shifting clouds. The music of Debussy, it often feels like a sonic painting, if you like, of the natural world. So he may not be literally trying to depict a storm, but he gives you the impression of being out in nature. Another famous composer who loved nature was Franz Schubert. Now, Schubert was a city dweller, but he loved to escape to the countryside, bring his friends with him, and bring his notebooks along, because the man was constantly writing music. Sometimes he would write as many as 6 to 8 songs in a day. And his song cycles, and I can't pronounce the German titles, but basically his song titles feature vivid images of rivers, forests. He has a famous piece called the Trout Quintet, or is it Quartet? Well, somebody will correct me in the comments, but nevertheless, Schubert used natural scenes as metaphors for inner emotional states. So what can you make of this? Well, for many composers, nature wasn't just a pleasant backdrop. And I got to admit, I'm out here on my back deck, out here in nature. It's very pleasant out here. But music for them, nature I should say, was more than just a pleasant backdrop. For these composers, it was also a source of emotional truth, inspiration, structural inspiration, even spiritual comfort. Made them feel closer to God in some ways. And being outside sparked melodies. It awakened their moods. It gave them the stillness that they needed to listen deeply to their inner musical voice. So, my encouragement for you, of course, is to get outside occasionally. You may need to take a break from practicing one day or playing songs and come out here into nature. You'll find that being outside can help calm your nerves, can inspire you, can cause you to think. You know, when you're out, if you go out for a hike or a walk, don't put on the headphones and blast stuff into your ears. I mean, there's a time and place for that, of course. But I encourage you sometimes just listen to the sounds around you. There are mornings when I come out here with Canina Bonita, my faithful dog who keeps me exercising, and I don't listen to anything except the sounds of nature. Now, today it's rather quiet out here, but some mornings I come out and I hear woodpeckers and doves and all kinds of birds that make me wish I knew more about ornithology. And of course, I occasionally hear the distant roar of traffic, but I try to ignore that. But I'm so thankful that I can come out here and be in the forest immediately, right outside my front door, and be inspired by being outside and being in nature. And that makes me want to create more, teach more things, and continue to do what I do here at Home with Music. So thanks for watching. This is a different type of video. I'm obviously not in my studio. If you have any comments, any questions, if there are any other composers that you can think of that you know were inspired by nature, then let me know about them and we'll discover a bit more about them together. If you'd like to support my work, you can go to my Patreon page. As always, the link is in the description. My thanks to all of you who have chosen to support the channel financially. I really appreciate it. Also, I appreciate those of you who have taken the time to subscribe. Doesn't take very much time to subscribe, you know. All you have to do is click subscribe and then ring the little bell. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I look forward to speaking to you in the next one, when most likely I will be back inside. So, now we're back in my studio, and Canina Bonita is resting comfortably, keeping me company here in my studio.